Yes, that's what we turn our attention to right now. The Super Falcons had a match just a few hours ago. I bet you were probably sleeping while that match was on. Interesting match, I must say. So let's get right into it. As you can see, we're being joined by Mr. Kunle Sholaja, who's a publisher, Sports Village Square, and a veteran sports journalist. Joins us right here in our studios. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, thank you very much.
This is one of those tournaments you have to stay up. I mean,
of
3:30 a.m. Your morning starts literally from that period. But the match has been played. Yeah. Nigeria against Canada. Some made a joke that it was Nigeria against Nigerians in Canada or some sort. But that aside, the match ended 0-0. But let's begin with your general perception of the quality of this tournament. It's the FIFA Women's World Cup. A lot of people might be comparing this, as you would expect, to the Men's World Cup. But from what you've seen, the few matches played so far, how would you rate the quality of this World Cup in Australia and New Zealand?
Certainly this is a World Cup with a difference, apart from the fact that it's the first to be co-hosted by two countries. It's an expanded World Cup, and it appears from the results so far will be the keenest ever. If you remember, I was in China 1991 at the inaugural edition. Score lines were heavy, 4-0, 9-0, 8-0. But you could see now that the score lines are coming down, which means the competition is becoming more and more keen. And teams that hitherto were not interested in women football, who just probably saw women football as maybe something like a novel, have now come to see that women football has come to stay. And now we have professional women footballers, and they are doing very well. In this competition now, you have 40-year-old playing. And what does that mean? It means that those women must be very strong. As a matter of fact, Christy Sinclair, who played for Canada in the match that just ended some few hours ago, is a record holder in terms of the number of goals she has scored. She has scored over 190 international goals. What that means is that when you compare, each squad has 23 players. So if you aggregate all the goals scored by 23 players in 21 of the countries, there were still 21 goals combined behind what one person has scored.
You know, now that you put it that way, it really places it. But we have our record holders as well, maybe. Even as a team, I mean, we've not missed, as far as I know, we've not missed any of the competitions. Am I correct?
We are the only country in Africa that has been ever present since the competition started.
So we can hold on to those records ourselves.
We can hold on to that.
But let's talk about this match. A lot of people had predicted the scoreline, maybe from what they saw in the opening match. So maybe they weren't expecting something quite different, like a wide margin, let me say, in the score. But 0-0, a penalty was missed. Nigeria got a red card. How would you rate that match you just saw? There were high expectations, Oshola and the rest. What was your rating of that match?
It was a thrilling match. And I also want to say that the benches of the two teams actually worked. Because sometimes like this, you pull the strings from the bench. From the onset, I've been one-on-one and looking at the quality of each squad, the Canadians were better. So, and what happens if you have a good coach? Once you know that a team is better than you, what you try to do, you know you'll be under pressure, you soak that pressure, and then you make occasional foray up front. And in one of those instances, you may be lucky to get the goal.
We got a shot on target, actually.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got more shots on target than Canada because it was all pressure, 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 but with little attempt at goal. You get the point? So that's where, for the first time, I think Randy Waldrum got it this time because he actually absorbed the pressure. In the first 20-30 minutes of that match, it was Canada all the way. And it was after 30 minutes, the Nigerian players started coming up front. Unfortunately, Oshoala, who's the star person there, didn't have anybody to back are up. And then you must also give credit to that young teenager who unfortunately got that red card. Debbie Abiodun. As standing as she was, she held that midfield.
Indeed.
And the VAR-induced red card that she got was just quite unfortunate. It just remind me of what happened to Alex Iwobi in the match against Tunisia. And again, and that's one thing, I don't want to take anything away from the officials. There were 2 instances too that I had expected a VAR review, which would have also led to at least 2 red cards to the Canadian. One was actually minutes after Abiodun had been red carded. Once you stamp on the foot of a fellow player, it is taken as a career-threatening injury if that person is injured. And that was why that red card. It may look something very casual, but the VAR called the attention.
And the rules are the rules anyway.
The rules are the rule. But I would have expected the VAR to have spotted those 2 instances. But then we are all human.
Well, it's interesting listening to you analyze the match. It, pretty much suggests, hints about the variations in opinions, about soccer. Particularly because some of the reviews, football, some of the
Canadians we call it
soccer.
I know, that was
well, but particularly because some of the reviews I have read, attribute words like sloppy, cagey match, and very few outperformers in the match. But you have said that, for the Nigerians to be able to stave off goals from excellent players like, what's the name of Sinclair. So what for you, should the team have done, particularly some names that were also bandied as expecting to give Nigeria a strong lead, names like Wama Dike, Oshoala, Osieme, did they perform to expectation for you?
Yeah, they did as a team. And don't also forget the antecedent of this team. They've had 7 matches losing streak, so to say. As a matter of fact, until last March or so, the last match they won was against Cameroon, the match that actually qualified them for this tournament. That was their last match. Every other matches they played, they were losing. And that gave us a lot of concern. And looking at that team too, during the Women African Nations Cup in Morocco last year, we knew that that team was aging. And that is the fear I have now. And that's where I felt a bit compassionate about Abiodun. She's just 19 years old. That's a player that we look forward to in future. Most of these players, this may just be the end of their World Cup.
Their last major tournament.
Their last major tournament. Some of them are still make the Women World Cup, Women African Nations Cup in Morocco again next year. But most of them, because they are aging. And unfortunately for us in Nigeria here, most of those players are offshore players. They are all based abroad. Very few are in Nigeria. Unlike what we have some 15, 20 years ago, when virtually all our national team players were homegrown. But you look at women football in Nigeria, it is going down. You can count them on your fingers, the number of women football teams that are actually in existence. Unlike some 20 years ago, when you even have private individuals. You have the Kakanfo Queens, owned by Simbiat Abiola. You have the Sugar Babes. You have the Jegede Babes. You have the Omidiran Babes. But because we didn't really pay attention to women football, that's why most of these teams die. You even see some teams being walked over in their own home game because they could not raise a team, they could not pay the players, and we also know that women football in Nigeria still doesn't attract a crowd. As a matter of fact, it was a big credit for Morocco last year that all the matches were attracting a huge crowd. I later went to Morocco and I found out what was the matter. They only started their women league just 6 years ago. We have started our own as far back as 1989. They started their own, and they focused on something that we want to be the best in Africa and one of the best in the world. What did they do? They picked players. Some of the players in clubs in Morocco, for instance, I know of Sporting Casablanca, a women football club in Morocco. They have players from some of these countries that have talented players, and they are grooming them. Each of those girls is being paid $1,000 every month. Something that even our own professional men footballers don't earn here. And where you don't invest, you can't expect to harvest. So and according to the sporting director of that club, he said they were getting subvention from the government through the Football Federation because they knew that these players will ultimately form the national team. And if you don't invest in them, you can't have a quality national team.
So if the Falcons have performed well under the circumstances, do you think that you know, those other reviews of the match being sloppy are jaundiced?
They are jaundiced because one thing is this: it's like Nigeria facing Argentina now. No matter how skillful our players are, or Brazil, you expect there will be that stage fright. There are some facts that precede a match. You know that one-on-one, this match is stronger. And what do? Just like when you are playing a game of chess, you begin to anticipate what are the likely actions of my opponent, and how do I do to counter them? And how do I now? And there is no team that is 100% very strong. How do I exploit the weaknesses of that team? So, and that's where you say, okay, we know we are not that strong, but what we do is this: let's do mass attack, mass defense. But you must give something to them. That match was their 27th match in World Cup history. And it's the first time they will be playing a goalless draw. And Canada, despite the hype about Canada, I tell you one thing: Canada has never defeated Nigeria in the World Cup.
Yet another bragging rights. You know, it's funny. Canada, they won the Olympics, right? They're Olympics champions. They are ranked top 10. Nigeria is 40th. So, I mean, on a lot of sides, this was perhaps a good match. But in less than a minute, let's talk about this Randy Waldrum matter. You know, before the tournament, there was the back and forth. I don't know if it's been resolved. Perhaps you have inside details. But do you see this affecting the team, the tournament, further into this competition?
Well, it may not, because first and foremost, the players too, they want to make names for themselves. They also hope to use this stage, the World Cup stage. That's where you are exposed to the whole world. Everybody in the world is watching. And you don't, because maybe I have one grudge or the other against the Football Federation, I'm not going to give my all the best that can come from me. It will ultimately also affect those players.
Right.
Yeah. So because of that, I still believe that after the tournament, they can always resolve this.
It looks like we'll be having you again, but we have to anchor at this point. We look forward to the next match. Mr. Kunle Sholaja, publisher, Sports Village Square, veteran sports journalist. Thank you so much for your time.
It's always a pleasure being here.